Hi, you're listening to Designing Yourself. My name is Paul McAleer.
And this is Whitney Hess.
This week, we'll be talking about intention. Plus, we'll be sitting down with the great Gina Trapani for an interview. And as it turns out, she knows a thing or two about intention.
And I spent a lot of time, years, 4 or 5 years, reviewing personal productivity apps, to-do list apps, project management apps, and thinking about all the ways that people try to get organized and articulate their intentions in order to reach their goals.
That's all coming up on this episode, so stay tuned.
So let's talk about intention.
Intention. Well, it's a good time of year because it is the new year. It's our first episode after the new year.
That's right. And our intentions to record have been very good ones, I would say. But it hadn't quite happened until this moment. So
yeah, we had the intention of starting sooner, but it didn't happen. And that's the interesting thing about New Year's resolutions too. We intend to do things differently or better, but actually doing them is a lot harder than having the intention, isn't it?
yeah, I'm curious what you think about that too, because the way I see it is that when you come up with New Year's resolutions, basically you're kind of giving yourself a chance to start over. You're giving yourself a chance to try new things or get rid of things that you see as bad, or change habits or change behaviors or change attitudes, and kind of all of these things. And I feel that the intention in almost any case is a really positive one, because I don't see many people making New Year's resolutions that are really bad. Like this year, I'm going to drive like an asshole. I don't see many people really doing that. I don't see that happening. Maybe it is. But people go into it then with a very positive attitude, right? And they see this is my opportunity to really be better, be more me, perhaps. And that's an awesome intention. That is a great attitude to have. So why do we confine that to January 1st every year?
You know, it's amazing that we need something so arbitrary like the end of a calendar that none of us had any input on designing, right? It's just this thing that we agree to use. We all have to agree because it makes life a lot easier if we're all on the same timetable, essentially. And it's totally arbitrary, and that's the day that we decide to take a step back and set an intention for the whole year. And as we all know, it's impossible to go through the whole year remembering that intention and acting on it because life gets in the way. So to your point, we said it once, but then what? You know, we don't do it often enough to actually make it happen. And it's interesting because I find that setting the intention in the first place does actually encourage the behavior at first. You know, oh, I'm remembering this was my intention, so I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to do this better. Oh, I'm remembering that was my intention. But then if you don't go back and set it again or reset it, as the case may be, you stop remembering what your intention was.
I'm wondering if intentions are just too big. I'm wondering about a lot of the typical New Year's resolutions that have probably become cliched and stereotyped at this point. There are things around usually weight loss and eating better and being a better blank. And it's so vague and so ill-defined that is the issue that the intention, yes, it's positive, yes, it's good, yes, it can foster a lot of good change. Is it just something that people fall down on when they fall down on it because it's so ill-defined? It's not something that I can just do I can't just be a better carpenter. I can work toward it. I have to figure out what that means to me. But it's not necessarily just a state of simply being for that type of intention.
Have you ever worked anywhere with 360 reviews?
Yes. Yes, I have.
Did anyone ever make you set SMART goals?
Yes. Yes, they have. I am painfully aware of that acronym.
So the thing about resolutions is that they're so vague. Like my resolutions are, at least, like drink more water. Well, how am I going to do that? What's more than what? I don't even know how much water I've been drinking. So how am I going to know when I'm drinking more? Or like, be kinder. They're just so broad. And yes, they're with a tremendously good intention behind them, but the goal itself is so vague that it's almost impossible to achieve, like you're saying. And so I'm immediately reminded of SMART goals. And I think this was like a Peter Drucker thing.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to be a worthwhile goal, I suppose, it has to be SMART, for those who haven't heard this term before. Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So I think of New Year's resolutions as being time-bound by the year. It's something that you intend to have achieved by the end of 2014. Right? At least that's how I think of it.
Totally. I agree. I think it's really, and I haven't said time boxed in a long time, but it's a very time boxed thing. But gosh, that means there's a lot more work that goes into it. And you might be able to get away with simply coming up with a list of intentions for the year, or for any period of time for that matter. But when do you get around to putting the work into it? Is that something that needs to be scheduled? Is that something that needs mini goals associated with it? Or neither of those things?
Well, are you saying that intention is not enough?
If you're reading between the lines, I think I am. And I'm not sure that I agree with that, though, even though I'm thinking strictly from like a project management perspective, which is a weird place for me to be. But intention can be helpful. It can be a guiding force. It can be extremely useful. And it can really kind of set the tone for the way that you want to approach your life, or a problem you're facing, or anything like that. I mean, you often hear people say that somebody's intentions are good, even though the outcome might not be really good. But
right, like when someone's being a jerk and they're hurting everyone around them, and then someone else says, "Yeah, but he's really well intentioned."
Exactly.
It's like somehow it's intended to like dissipate how the person behaved, because underneath it all, they had good intentions.
So can you then be a terrible driver and have the intention of being a good driver? Driving is such a softball example, so you have to forgive me for going there. But
yeah, I think so. I think if every time someone got in the car, they set the intention of driving well.
Yes.
That they could actually become a better driver. Yes, I believe
so.
that. And so even though you're saying intentions aren't enough, I actually think we might also be saying that without the intention, you're never going to achieve that goal.
Is an intention by itself a goal?
Well, I feel like it... Okay, so maybe setting an intention is different than having intention. Mm-hmm. So let's clarify. Intentions might be more innate and not something that people necessarily decide on, so that they're just well-intentioned or poorly intentioned, bad intentioned, I guess, may mean that they just innately, naturally plan to do good or plan to do bad. And it just kind of colors the things that they do. But I feel like that's very limited and kind of a black and white view on people, which may not be all that realistic. So when someone's just described as having good intentions, it may mean that they wanted to do something well. And so in that case, isn't that a goal? I mean, even if it wasn't a smart goal, wasn't it still a goal that they wanted to do something well? They intended to do it well?
Absolutely. And that also supports any effort people put into things. You know, if you have good intentions and you try at something, and whether you fail or succeed or end up somewhere in the middle, your intentions were good and you put in effort. So it's fairly positive. And if you don't achieve a goal, it seems like that's all right.
Yeah, I think so, because you set out with the desire to achieve something. And what I think we're getting at here is it's a thoughtfulness. So you had the time, or you made the time to be thoughtful about what you were trying to achieve, and you made that your state of mind. And I think that's what I was referring to earlier about setting an intention. It's different than just having good intentions, because when you set your intention, you are purposely being thoughtful about what you're about to do. And I think that when you set out to be thoughtful prior to engaging in something, there's a much higher likelihood of that thing happening the way you want it to, for it to go the way that you intended, if you set an intention prior to doing that. And the thing that immediately comes to mind for me is yoga. So some teachers, not all of the teachers that I take yoga classes with, some of them will say at the beginning of class, when we're first all sitting on our mats and having our initial deep breaths and getting centered and being in the present moment, the instructor will say, set an intention for today's class.
Right.
Sometimes they're vague about it, and then you just have to sit there and think, well, what's my intention today? Other times they're less vague, and they'll say, when you're in setting your intention, think about someone that really needs, positivity in their lives right now. Think about someone who you're really grateful for. And they give you kind of a theme to go with. And then you're setting this, hopefully positive. I would imagine if you're in the yoga class, it's a positive intention. And then as you're doing the yoga practice, that person or that thing that you put your mind to in the beginning is with you the whole time. And I found that it makes the practice easier physically. It keeps me more present mentally, because when I lose myself and I'm going off, where I'm thinking about my work or thinking about my family or whatever, my brain is outside of the room that I'm in at that moment. I somehow remember my intention and I'm brought back. Mm-hmm. And so it's a way to keep you focused. And then at the end of the practice, when I've done all that hard work in the room, I bring back to mind what my intention was, and there's like a deeper sense of pride, for me at least, than had I just done the yoga practice and then quickly scrambled, rolled up my mat and ran out the room, got back on my phone and got back to my day. Like, there's something that puts a period on the end of the sentence because you've set an intention in the beginning where you're like, oh, I have closure in this, and I can recognize the power and the importance of what I just did. And just that moment to do it, like, integrates it in a way that without the intention otherwise might not have.
Totally. And that's been my experience with yoga as well. The teachers that I've worked with, and admittedly there haven't been too many, have really started by asking us to envision and set in our minds a person specifically that we want to do our practice for that day. And much like you, I find that when I have someone in mind, then maybe it is easier, but it's more of a focus for me. I mean, this yoga is already about focus and at least in one facet, and this helps put, as you say, that kind of period and that point on it. So one thing I'm curious about is that's a really solid example of doing something with somebody else in mind. So your actions are with the intention of helping someone else. When we are creating New Year's resolutions, which are, perhaps actions, but generally intentions, do we do them for us or for others? And when we do that, does that affect the way we approach it? I bet it does. Because if it is something for you, it's one thing, right? It's I'm going to lose weight. I hate that example, but it's a very common one. But
right,
it's so cliched and not great, but that's a very common one. That's generally for someone's self and their body, and they see that as a way to perhaps improve health or what have you. But if it's something like, I'm going to support my spouse or significant other more, or I'm going to do, and this is again keeping it vague, but I'm going to do more for my kids or walk my dog every day or something like that, that's more of a putting it out there for someone else and having that kind of energy out there. I just wonder if we just have different standards when it's not us who's the potential recipient of it, even though it benefits us either way. Whether we're doing it for us, we're doing it for someone else, it's still, intentions are good. It's still something that's positive for us ultimately.
Yeah, I really wonder if it's easier to do things for others than it is for ourselves. I feel like, at least for me, that's the case. I know that is why I'm in this profession in the first place. And I also know that it's why I was attracted to consulting versus working in-house. There's something for me that's so much more appealing about going into companies and working on their problems than it being my problem. Like, I'm the one who has to maintain this thing. I'm the one that has to evolve this product. Like, this is going to be me all the time. Like, I have to own this forever. And now I have to find the energy to keep making it better and keep getting feedback. And that's like, whoa, that's way harder for me than the idea that I work for this company. In this very specific time period, I will be thinking about their problem. We'll be working on their problem. It's their problem, and I can dedicate myself to that. I can stay up all night long working on someone else's problem, but on my own, and I'm talking about in a professional setting here, but obviously this applies to personal as well. It's like, doing something for myself, we always put ourselves last. I think everyone does this. I will be there for a friend in a heartbeat, and I will never cancel on a friend, but I'll cancel on myself constantly. Like, even when I was going to the gym, I lived in this building and there was a gym on the ground floor, and I had no excuse not to go because you could take like an elevator and then go like through an inner door. So even when it was snowing, I could still get there without going outside. There was no excuse. And at first, I set a schedule. I put all these things in my calendar. I had the intention of going 3 times a week at this specific time, and I blocked it off so that I wouldn't, schedule anything over it. And then I never went. And eventually I decided to get a trainer. And when I had a trainer and we scheduled time together, I never canceled on that trainer. And I went all the time. Whenever they said, this is our next session, that's when I showed up. And I would never cancel on them, because the idea of having set the intention with them and showing them that, yes, I did intend to come back at that time that they said, canceling that and not following through on that intention for them was unthinkable. But setting the intention for myself and canceling on myself was common.
I do that too. And I'm curious how you feel about it after you cancel on yourself. Because for me, what I find is that I don't feel or notice the consequences immediately. They linger. I'm thinking also around the gym. Oh gosh, we can't avoid it. And it's very different if you have somebody else there who's there because that person helps you perhaps be accountable, right? And we're social creatures, so it does stand to reason that if there's somebody else involved, we feel for them as well, because they are also making a commitment, a time commitment to do this thing. I mean, that's kind of why, we have meetings in work and things like that. And that's why we spend time with other people. But when it is us, is it just that it's not as immediate of a consequence or benefit? Sometimes it can be. I mean, I know that after I exercise, I feel incredible and can take on the world. But then there are times where it's like, okay, I'll skip it. I'll get around to it. My intentions are good. I'll get around to it.
I don't notice right away the impact of setting an intention for myself and then not following through on it. But like you're saying, there's like a lingering. It does. It comes back to me. And that doesn't happen if I haven't set the intention. Like if I just mindlessly put something on my calendar that I'm going to do for myself, or mindlessly think of doing something tomorrow, like, I'm going to go get a massage. I'm going to go get a manicure. Like, I'm going to treat myself well. I'm going to do something. But I just kind of like, it's a passing thought. Then when I don't do it, I don't have that same sense of guilt. But if I've really consciously set the intention to do it and then I don't do it, I feel it. Maybe not right away, but later on it comes back to me and I'm like, God, I wanted that for myself and I still didn't do it. That hurts because I was mindful of how much I wanted it, and I wanted it enough to agree with myself that I would in fact do it. And I think that's what separates intention from desire, that intention has kind of an actionability. Is that a word?
Sure, let's make it a word.
To it. There's something about intention that signals that the action will follow. Whereas a desire is like, I have a desire to travel to Australia, but I'm not going to spend any time tonight figuring out how to get there. Like, I don't really believe that I'm going to go there anytime soon, and I'm not going to work on that. But if I were to set the intention of going to Australia this year, then throughout the year, in little ways, I would be working on getting myself there. And I think that there's just action implicit in intention.
I'm thinking similarly that it feels a lot like, gosh, I keep coming back to projects, but it feels like setting an overall goal and then developing a project plan for it. But really, really kind of narrowing it down to the smallest, littlest thing that you can do if you want to do it. And one thing I'm wondering as well, as we're kind of talking about this and how it relates to other people versus ourselves, maybe one of the things that's really powerful about New Year's resolutions is it's a time when everybody gets to really focus on themselves. We are giving ourselves collective permission to do that. And this is the time to do it. There really isn't too much other time in the year that I can think of, like on this arbitrary calendar and all that good stuff, where we collectively say, hey, this can be for me. Because there's lots of stuff for other people, and that's very good. But this is the one, it feels like this is like the one chance that everybody gets every year to spend time focusing on themselves, or ostensibly spending time focusing on themselves and what they're going to do for the year. And I can't think of any other time when by a calendar, by a shared schedule with lots and lots of other people, we do that. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't do it on January 3rd or October 9th or any other day of the year or week of the year or what have you. It's just that I'm wondering if part of it is just the collective attitude and positivity around New Year's, which is mixed with a lot of negativity as well, just getting rid of those negative habits and those bad habits. But is that a key part of it as well, is that this is the time when everybody gets a free pass and can focus on themselves, and it's quote unquote okay. But any other time, it might not be okay.
Because you're doing it on your own. And I think
totally
there's something about the social aspect of it. I think you're dead on. There's something about the fact that everyone else is doing it too that makes it more acceptable. And a couple things come to mind. One, you say, this is the only time of year that you can think of, but for me, it's actually another time of year which is even more serious than the New Year's resolutions, which are the days of atonement between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur.
Uh-huh.
And that's the Jewish New Year. And the Jewish New Year has a slightly different angle on the whole thing. I feel as though New Year's resolutions are more about the future, what you want the future year to be. And the Days of Atonement are more about looking at your past year, identifying what you didn't do so well, how you didn't treat people very well, maybe how you didn't treat yourself very well, and making the vow to do better next year. So it's a slightly different perspective, but the activity is similar, and you kind of you do your reflections and you make your amends over the course of these 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And then on Yom Kippur, when you're fasting for 24 hours, you are essentially asking for forgiveness from God or from whomever you depending upon your beliefs. And yes, even though every one of us may be Jewish, we feel differently about our relationship to God or to ourselves. So you're kind of looking for that sign that you are, in fact, absolved of your sins for the previous year, and you're setting the intention to not sin again in those same ways, at least, in the coming year. And what I find so wonderful about that time of year is the knowing that other Jewish people, certainly not all of them, because not everyone celebrates or observes in the same way, but a lot of other people are doing this same thing. And it is internal, but it's collective. And I have, been asked in the past, or I've had conversations with friends who are not Jewish about this, and some who are Catholic, and they liken it to confession. But what's so interesting to me is that even though confession's available year-round, and you can basically always go into the booth and use that as an opportunity to reflect on the past and set better intentions for the future, you have to have the initiative to do it yourself. That it's not like every single person in the congregation is doing it at the same time. I don't know enough to know how it works, and I'm sure that it's during Mass or before Mass or after Mass or something where there's office hours, so to speak, that the priest is in the booth taking confessions. But I I still feel as though so much is required of the individual to get themselves to that place where they can go in and set the intention to be better. Whereas for us in Judaism, it's like, this is the day on the calendar, you know that everyone else is doing it, and then you go to synagogue on Yom Kippur, some people do, and everyone there is fasting together, and you're kind of all in the same boat, and it's more akin to these New Year resolutions, whereas you're saying everyone knows this is a time of year where you're working on yourself, so it's more allowed to set these intentions that are for your own well-being than, all of the intentions that we have for our behavior towards others during the year.
Right. And yeah, that's a great point. And it's funny you mentioned Catholicism, because I grew up Catholic, and most of my stuff I've honestly I've forgotten. But one thing I do remember is, you mentioned with confession, it's kind of a one-on-one thing, and you have to do it on your own, and that's true. But I will tell you that one thing I thought as a kid was that the priest just kind of hung out in the confession booth, and we're just kind of ready to go at any time. I thought they were there kind of all the time, and you could just like drop in whenever you needed to and do that. And that's not quite how it works, I later found out. One thing.
So is it like office hours?
I've forgotten. I've totally forgotten.
Maybe one of our listeners is Catholic or knows how this works, and we can find out if, in fact, confessional hours are like office hours and they're like posted somewhere and people know about it.
I suspect that that's the case, and I also would imagine it varies per congregation. I don't think there's any. I don't know. Maybe there is a standard for that. One other thing we had discussed a little bit earlier that I want to come back to is also intention and desire, and that difference. That made me think about the difference between intention and attitude, because we've been kind of talking about the notion of having good intentions and being well-intentioned kind of in general. And the way I've heard that and really kind of thought about it is that it is how someone is. So is there a particular point at which intention crosses over into attitude, or is it simply that you have all these positive intentions and good intentions, and thus you are well intentioned? Does it just kind of snowball up into who you are? Does it go the other way? Can someone be ill-intentioned and yet be a good person? I mean, are these things that go together? Are they separate? Is it all connected, or are these very compartmentalized? I'm feeling like they're pretty connected. I'm feeling like it goes well together, but it's also it's not like you can't change from being an ill-intentioned person to a good-intentioned person. I think it's certainly possible. I don't see that as being, well, that person's just always going to be bad or anything like that. I don't see that at all. But is it simply that in order to be regarded as well-intentioned, either by yourself or by others or both, it's simply a matter of, doing these little things so often that it just becomes rote for you?
Well, if you want to become well-intentioned, you have to set the intention to become intentioned. I think that it's, there is a relationship to attitude, but I also wonder if it's not just, because attitude is kind of emotion. I feel like attitude is the emotions with which we say things, the way we do things, but it's less about kind of something cerebral and more about something that's innate to us and the qualities that we're bringing to the things that we say and the things that we do. And so like when I'm doing a persona, for instance, with a client, and we're going through, pages and pages of notes from user interviews, and we're sussing out what the common attitudes are across user interviews, the little shorthand that I give them for attitude is I feel. And so I feel as though, there I go, feeling something. I believe that attitude and emotion are very connected. Whereas intention, I think, is more of the mind. I think that but that it becomes attitude. I'll put it that way. So we have an intention. It's of the mind. It's mindfulness or a thoughtfulness about how we want to approach something, how we want to achieve something, and by setting that intention, by being mindful of it, that eventually it becomes our attitude. And so when someone says of another, they're well-intentioned, what I think it might mean is that even though the attitude was negative, it came across as negative, it was perceived as negative, they didn't act the way we wanted them to, but they were well-intentioned. I think that means they had the mindfulness or the thoughtfulness to behave well or to feel well, but that it didn't become embodied. So they set out wanting one thing, but they weren't able to embody it. And that's why we experienced it as being different than how they intended. And I do believe that it's connected to attitude, but I think that it precedes it.
I agree with you on that. And I really like the idea of embodiment being a factor in this as well. In part because it feels like we've mostly been talking about the mind during our discussion. And the body's just kind of been not as big a factor, I guess. But is attitude, well, attitude is something that encompasses the body, right? So can intention encompass the body as well? Or is that strictly a mind thing?
Well, maybe it needs to start in the mind by, having intention is a mindfulness or thoughtfulness about how we want to behave and how we want to feel.
Right.
But that it's just the beginning. And so if we don't act on it and we don't incorporate it into our heart, if we don't live by it, then it's just intention, which means it's only in the mind, and that's the only place it stays. And I think that helps clarify what we were talking about earlier with regards to if they don't do it, if there's no follow through, does it still count? Well, perhaps it does, but it was only of the mind. It wasn't of the heart or of the body. And so it has less meaning, not no meaning, but it has less meaning and less power because it wasn't integrated in the person in those three ways. They set the intention, so their mind was on it, but their mind, they couldn't get aligned with their heart, how they feel, and what their attitude is towards it, and how they act, how their body is toward it.
That makes sense. It's really then it becomes all thought, no action, right? If the intention is there, it may be extremely positive, extremely helpful. But if there's no follow through, hey, it's good that the intention's there, but there may be this longing or this desire or this need in some cases to see more, to see what happens when that intention is realized.
Yes.
Within somebody, within their body, within their heart, within their whole selves. Then that's kind of the exciting stuff.
I totally agree, and I think that is exactly right. That we grasp onto what went well, and that was that the intention was set. So even though it was great thought but not great action, we're still able to recognize that the initial thought was there and give credit where credit was due. But overall, it has a lot less power because there was, in fact, no follow through and the intention never got embodied.
That's right. Yep, that's exactly it. So
wow, we cracked intention.
We did, but I have a question. Do you do New Year's resolutions?
I do.
You do? I don't.
I have done them every year for as long as I can remember.
Oh, wow.
And I don't do resolutions during the Yom Kippur time. I take a different tact with that. But I actually, January 1st, I sit down and I write my resolutions, and I don't look back on them that often. I look back on them more like January, February, March, but then as the year goes on, I kind of forget about them. Sure. But I do set an intention for the year. This year, though, for the first time basically ever, I didn't write a list of 10, and instead I only had one. And I wrote a blog post all about it. I didn't think I was going to share it because I don't think I've shared my resolutions in the past. Maybe I have and I'm misspeaking. But it's not usually something that I do for anyone else. I'm just doing it for myself. So I don't intend to share them. But this year, I also didn't intend to share my resolution. But I ended up sharing it anyway. It made sense for me to do it. And so you can go check out that blog post and read all about what my intention for 2014 is.
And I think it was, if memory serves, it was to reference Greece in every other tweet that you posted.
Yes, that was it.
Which is a great one to have. Such a good intention.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I appreciate your validation of my good intentions.
Oh, absolutely. You're quite welcome. That's not really it. It's an excellent post, and I won't just fall over myself saying, wow, it was great, but it was really truly great. So thank you for sharing it.
Thank you for reading it. Wow.
My intentions were good, and so were yours, and I think we did it, as you say. I think we got our intentions fulfilled.
Well, I look forward to hearing if any of our listeners have set their own intentions, either in the form of a New Year resolution or use it in some other way. So if you're listening and, intention is something that you do and something that you set and you have a method for doing it that you want to share, or you just want to totally disagree with everything we've said, we welcome it. So please be sure to get in touch.
Absolutely. We want to hear about the way you approach intention as well and what it means to you. So don't be shy.
Gina Trapani is the founder and creator of ThinkUp and Todo.txt. She hosts 2 technology podcasts, This Week in Google and All About Android. She is the founding and former editor of Lifehacker. She lives in Brooklyn, New York. Thank you, Gina, so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on the show because I've listened to every single episode, and now I feel like I'm getting to live in an episode live and for real. This is the only podcast that I listen to that I have on multiple occasions had to pause it and just think things through, think through what you were talking about, and then restart it, and start it again to continue the conversation because it's such a sort of deep and thought-provoking approach to the topic. So I'm really honored to be here. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you.
Thank you.
So the episode that every episode has its own topic. And the episode that we're working on now is all about intention. And when I mentioned this to you, Gina, you said, I actually built this to-do list app, but it's really an intention list app. So I was curious to know, what did you mean? What is an intention list app?
Well, Whitney, I've heard you talk about to-do lists before, and I've heard you say that you feel like, writing things down on a list and crossing them off the list and being focused on crossing things off the list sort of takes the thoughtfulness out of life and just keeps us busy without keeping us kind of focused and conscious and mindful of what we want to achieve. And it made me smile because I think to some degree that is true. But so I build a to-do list app. It's a very simple to-do list app. In fact, it purposely doesn't have very many features. You're not going to find, flags and stars and recurring tasks and dependencies and sharing and collaborations. You can't assign things, or you can't even add due dates. I mean, this is like very, very simple, flat, plain text list. And I started building it in 2006, so it was like 8 years ago. And I've been, sort of, it's a side project. My effort and time and thought kind of waxes and wanes over time, depending on what else is going on in my life. But I thought a lot about the app. It's I use it every day. I kind of live by my to-do list. But I thought a lot about what that means. And to me, a to-do list is an intention list. And what I mean by that is, I think that keeping a list, I'm a writer, I have to write things down. If something isn't written down, it doesn't exist in my world. So to me, keeping a to-do list is about thinking about what my goals are, where I'm feeling pulled at the moment, what are the things I've seen in the world that have stirred something in me, and creating an action around that. To get to that place, I want to be that thing. I want to try that. I want to find out more about that, and then creating an action in my head. Well, what's the first thing I would need to do? Do I need to type something into Google? Do I make a phone call? Do I need to read a book? And then putting that in a list and putting that in my to-do list. And then at some point, because I've written that down, it will happen for me because I look at my list and I live by my list, and eventually I either do it or I decide I don't need to do it. Or, sometimes when I'm really busy, I ignore it for a really long time and then wonder what the heck it's doing there.
And so,
I know that feeling very well.
Yeah. So I guess that's what I meant about a to-do list. For me, being an intention list, I really think that your to-do list, your intentions, which are I think synonymous with goals and visions, are kind of define who you are in a lot of ways. Like it's your aspirations.
that's a really interesting way of putting it, that intention and goal and intention for yourself, a goal for yourself, are synonymous to you. So what is it about creating a product that's built around capturing your intentions that is something that you were interested in doing? Why were you driven to do this?
Well, I founded Lifehacker, which is a productivity app site, which I led the editorial team for like 5 years, and it's a tips and tricks and productivity app kind of site. It's your typical kind of tech site that tells you about keyboard shortcuts and how to process your inbox and all that stuff, and that's fine, and it was fun, and there's a giant appetite for that sort of thing. And I spent a lot of time, 4 or 5 years, reviewing personal productivity apps, to-do list apps, project management apps, and thinking about all the ways that people try to get organized and articulate their intentions in order to reach their goals. So I finally decided to write my own app because this is kind of what nerds do. And it's a terrible thing that nerds do this. I mean, I'm a programmer, so I had the ability to do this. So instead of actually crossing things off my to-do list, I decided to make a to-do list app. That's a whole other neurosis that we could talk about maybe in another show. But I built it because I wanted just a very, very simple way, and like I said, a purposefully feature a very simple app that didn't have a lot of features. I wanted a way to keep track of what I needed to do over the long term, and I wanted to have a log of all the things I intended to do and did it or didn't do. And I have that. I have this giant text file that's like thousands of lines that dates back to 2006, because I think that what you want to do and what you have done and what you've decided not to do, that's all sort of just a part of your path. In a way, it's been kind of a journal in some ways for me.
Wow, so you've got a record of all the things that you've done since 2006, essentially.
Yeah, I mean everything that I've written down and completed. Yeah, because the system it's a text file based system. So it's a to do file, it's a to do text file, and then when you complete something, it goes into a done text file. And I've had those text files, which I use a text format because any editor can open it, and if the company dies or if Outlook decides not to import it or whatever, I'd still have it. So yeah, I've been carrying that around with me since 2006. So it's a long, and I can't say that I look at it. I don't look at my done.txt file very often, really, but I like to know that it's there, and I like the idea that the data kind of came with me, and it's this long-standing record.
That's really fantastic. I would be floored to have stuff that I did in 2006 with me. I mean, it would just be, I can't even imagine how that would feel, just knowing that I had that sense of everything done.
Well, I'd be horrified to see what I was doing in 2006.
It is kind of hard. Well, both of you are long-term bloggers, right? I mean, both of you have been writing online for a long time. You talked about this a little bit on the show, right? Like looking back at your archives, it's the same sense of horror as looking back at your blog archives.
You've mentioned the todo.txt and kind of having to create this, wanting to create this system and just a way to get this information out. And now you've got ThinkUp, which I'm a user of, and I think Whitney is too, right?
Yeah.
And it's pretty awesome. I get a lot out of it, and I see it as being a little different than intention, but I'd love to hear kind of how it fits in with todo.txt and kind of everything else, with intention versus organization versus motivation, kind of where it fits in.
So the idea of ThinkUp is that we all spend a bunch of time on social networks, Twitter, Facebook, Foursquare, Google Plus, whatever, Instagram. And the idea is like all these companies have all this data about us and they use it to profile us and advertise to us, right? Because primarily these networks are advertising based businesses, but there's all this data out there and it's available via these APIs. And what can we find out about ourselves through our own data that we're sort of pumping into these systems all day for those of us who use these systems, who use social networks avidly. So ThinkUp's purpose is to kind of help you see, what is your impact on the network when you participate on it. Like I'm not one of these people who says, oh, you're wasting your life on Facebook or Twitter. I actually think it's the opposite. I think that participating on the network actually has a great impact. You can reach lots and lots of people, more people than my parents certainly could have reached, without the internet now by just, typing a very short message. You both know this. You both have big audiences on these networks. And so the point of ThinkUp is to kind of show you how you're spending your time in these networks, who you're reaching, what content that you put out there had the biggest impact or got the biggest response, and how like your time on these networks is actually meaningful. And rather than be a Google Analytics style dashboard where it's just a bunch of charts and it's up to you to kind of interpret what the charts mean, ThinkUp's goal, and we're getting there. We still have a lot of work to do, but we're getting there. ThinkUp's goal is to tell you when something interesting happens that you should care about. And it's just kind of an alert stream, like, oh, hey, somebody that you might want to pay attention to just followed you. Or like, hey, people are describing you using this word by putting you in these lists this way. Like, does that make sense? That kind of thing. It's sort of an automated blog about yourself and how you're spending your time and how you're participating and how you're connecting and what content you're sharing on social networks. So in a way, it kind of is a productivity app. In a way, it's like, oh, try get more from your time online. But it's also more just about, what are you putting out there in the world online, and what are you getting back? And ThinkUp's goal is to encourage you to kind of use your superpowers for good, right? Like these social networks give you superpowers, and how can we use those powers for good?
The thing that sticks with me about ThinkUp and the way you describe it too is that it's not necessarily itself about what you're intending to do, but you kind of see the effects in a way.
Yeah.
Right? Because one of the things that I find valuable about it is, seeing how many additional people, saw a tweet because somebody else retweeted it or I retweeted it or what have you. But having that sense and that perspective on it really gives a little more information than just the 140 characters on Twitter.
Yeah, I mean the idea was really kind of mindfulness. So I was working on ThinkUp when that terrible school shooting in Connecticut happened. And I found out about it on Twitter. I wasn't watching the news. I don't really watch the news, right? I watch Twitter. And I was watching people kind of react, and most of the reaction is deep grief and sadness, awe, what a terrible world this is, outrage about guns. And I wanted to say something about it, but I wanted to say the right thing. I wanted to say something respectful. I wanted to express my grief. I wanted to make a change. I wanted to act in that moment, right? Because we always want to act in those moments of terrible tragedy. And I wound up like retweeting a link for an organization that works towards gun control, right? And I really kind of struggled. It was like, what is the right reaction? What is the thing that's going to help in this moment? What's a good thing? And that tweet, due to mine and a bunch of other people's, really traveled far. It got retweeted far and wide. And I think that organization's website went down, and they got more money, than they had in a really long time. And that was just a kind of really small way to kind of to do something. I felt like I had done something in the moment, and that was I built one of ThinkUp's insights, which tells you like how many more people saw a tweet when you retweeted it.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah,
mine too.
Because it's the idea of like, if you have an audience, by retweeting something, you are sharing that audience with someone else. You're giving someone else that audience. Everyone's always about like, how do I get more followers? ThinkUp's about the opposite thing. Like, how are you giving other people more followers? At least that's our goal.
It's not just a tool for yourself, but it's a tool for others. I love the mindfulness aspect of that. That's cool.
That's like the difference between to-dos and intentions, I think, is the mindfulness aspect.
I can see how better understanding how your behavior has an impact can help you set a different intention if in fact what you're seeing there is not what you wanted initially, or it surprises you in a way that makes you rethink how you're using these tools and how you're behaving on them.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we're talking a lot about kind of, we were with the to-do list of, these are the things that I want to achieve. These are the things that if I achieved would make up the person that I want to be. Having that perspective, having those goals. And I think that for a lot of people, especially if they were to see their behavior reflected back at them the way that ThinkUp does, they would be very surprised that in fact, it's not achieving what I had set out to. So I'm curious to know your thoughts on how you think you move from an intention to action. So from just wanting to be a certain way to actually following through on that. What's involved in that process?
That is the hardest part, right? Like the hardest part isn't doing the thing that you decided to do. The hardest part is deciding like what you need to do. So I think when you have an intention, I mean, so often our goals and our visions and our dreams are very amorphous, right? Like they don't have hard edges. They're these big giant things that can sometimes be, a long-term decision. For 8 years, I had this vague notion that I wanted to become a parent, but like that, especially for me, because I'm in a same-sex couple. Becoming a parent for me was like fraught with so many possible decision paths and ways that I could possibly, kind of become a parent. So it's like one of these, like I have no idea where to start. And I think that this is like the difference between having a dream and having an intention. I mean, for me, an intention is like, I'm doing this. It's not someday maybe I'd like to speak French. It's like, this is going to happen for me. And that's the essence of what an intention is. And I think that once you get to that place of, this is happening, I'm going to do this, and I need to make it happen, and I'm going to move whatever mountains I need to in this universe to try to make it happen. I'm at least going to do my best to try to make it happen. I think that's when you start to break it down to what's the next action. Not to get to Getting Things Done on you guys. I don't know if either of you have read David Allen's Getting Things Done book. I apologize for bringing up a productivity book.
Very familiar with it. But
yes, you are.
We want to hear your take on it.
And it's fully deserving of many eye rolls. But his whole thing is like breaking down goals into next actions, and next actions as small as like pick up the phone and dial this number, or type up 2 paragraphs about a topic. And I think that that's like the toughest part about getting anything done, is breaking it down into what is the next thing I need to do to move myself just a tiny bit closer to the end goal.
It's so funny that you brought him up, because I, in general, try not to prescribe to these things. But right now, right this very moment, I have on my big whiteboard I'm pretty sure he's the one that came up with the 4 quadrants.
Yes.
Important, not important, urgent, not urgent.
Yep.
And in the past, I had avoided such things, but I'm finding myself spread very thin just at this one moment in time. I had gotten much better at it, but there was a lot coming down on me right now, and I was having a hard time deciding what to do first, in large part because the most of the stuff that I've got going on are personal projects. And I'm very used to having other people define deadlines. And so that's ultimately how I decide what to do first, is what's due soonest. But for this, now I've got my 4 quadrants here. And the thing that's pushing it closer to action for me is it in quadrant 1, which is both important and urgent. So I like your point about how you have to just move it forward a little bit at a time. That kind of pushes you closer and closer towards action.
Yep. And that's what it is. It's just, at the end of the day, I just want to be able to say, if I can't say I completed something, I want to at least just be able to say I'm a little tiny bit closer to that thing than I was yesterday. And that's a big accomplishment.
Yeah,
it definitely is. It definitely is. And I was thinking about earlier too, when you were talking about creating something on a to-do list, you had said that you might encounter something that kind of strikes you and you have to add it to your list. So, as we're all kind of familiar with GTD, I'm curious, is it something at that point that comes in your list as something that's big and amorphous and vague, as you put it? Or are you already thinking about that very next step?
So I actually prescribe the GTD method, not very closely, but kind of closely. So Alan has his notion of like a someday maybe list and a next actions list. So next actions is like, I'm doing this and I thought this through enough that I know exactly the next step that I need to take. Even if I don't know all the steps, I at least know the next step I have to take. And to me, that's a to do. If I see something that I have some sort of vague notion, if I'm watching the Olympics and I have some sort of vague notion that someday I'd like to try snowboarding, right? That's a someday maybe thing for me. Like if I feel an urgency, like I must try snowboarding, this year or this winter, then okay, the next action might be start researching places to go snowboarding near me, right? But if it's just sort of a vague thing of like, oh, this is interesting, I'd like to look into this more, then that goes into my kind of someday maybe list. And I try to review those lists. I've got next actions and someday maybe, and then he's got these other sort of notions of like 10,000 feet and 25,000 feet, kind of short term and longer term. I don't go that far into it, but I do have sort of I think that there's a place in our psyches for this is something that I have a vague interest in. If I'd like to go to Barcelona someday, and then but I don't have immediate plans, but a conference comes up there that I have an opportunity to go, then it's like, yes, that's that makes that decision easier. And for me, it just becomes more real, and sort of in my world if I've written it down somewhere.
So for you, it's a lot about taking that idea and writing it down, and then at some point combing through it and then breaking it down to those next steps. Right. Basically.
Yeah. So intentions for me have next steps. Like I'm doing this and this is the next thing I'm going to do about it. Whereas sort of dreams or just sort of interests can be, maybe they're not actionable at the moment. And that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
It sounds to me like you see intentions as having a sort of immediacy to them. Maybe not an urgency, but like they're in the present tense. Not just like something that perhaps I'll get to in the future.
Yeah, I mean, my intention can be like, I'm gonna look into this again sometime, and I've got no deadline. I mean, but that is the loosest, I think, of intentions. For me, an intention is tied to action. If I have an intention that I'm going to do this, and I'm making it's in my system. I'm gonna do something about that pretty, in the foreseeable future. Let's say that.
I'm curious too about moving from intention to giving something your attention, because there's so much that could compete for it, right? And Whitney, you had mentioned the 4-quadrant setup, and a lot of people just do latest and loudest. So whatever is the current thing, they respond to that, and it's arguably not terribly organized, and it gets us away in general from that sense of intention and what you're doing with it. So I'm curious then, what are the steps that you take, and how do you give something your attention?
I get really unhappy and discontented when I don't feel like I'm moving forward in the things that I want to be moving forward in. And there are times when I'm just busy at work, or life takes over, and I'm busy, and there's a lot of urgency every day. But and I don't move anything on my to-do list for a couple of weeks, and then I start to get really cranky, and I feel like I'm in some sort of urgency holding pattern, and I'm attending to other things, other people, other problems that don't matter as much to me as my stuff, as my intentions, as the projects that I really want to be in. And when I start to get cranky, and I start to wake up in the morning and feel like I'm working on stuff that I don't want to be working on today, I'm working on stuff that other people are foisting upon me versus the stuff that I've kind of decided for myself, then I know I got to change something up. I got to delegate. I got to clear my schedule. I have to take a mental health day off from work, whatever it is, and kind of get myself back on track and be like, what's going on here? Am I procrastinating on the stuff on my list because it's not thought through enough? Am I scared? Is it stuff that I really don't want to do? Am I truly just tied up with stuff at work? Like, is work so crazy that I can't take care of my stuff? And if that's the case, then I have to adjust some dials there. But yeah, I start to feel that. Like, I start to feel like stressed and cranky, and at that point I step back and go like, okay, I'm not moving toward the things I want to be moving toward, and I'm feeling I feel bad about it. Like, I start to feel I start to feel this like weird sadness about it. Like, I'm not getting done what I want to get done, and I need to figure out why.
I'm also wondering too, was there a time, first of all, before you had to-do lists, or were lists like always a part of your life?
Whenever I felt kind of scattered and disorganized, or like I couldn't make sense of what was going on in the world, I always kind of sat down and wrote, if not a list. But yeah, as I get older and busier, it became more like, instead of writing a journal of what happened to me that day, I would just jot lists of things that I wanted to see happen in the future, and or in the next couple of days, or what I'm going to do next. Like, I became, maybe to a fault, a little bit like, I'm having this problem, and these are the things I need to do to solve it, which can be a fault. I mean, sometimes you just have to be in a problem.
Yeah, I mean, that could be argued that, you're trying to just think ahead in that problem instead of being in it. But one thing I've found is that if I, like you, if I don't make a list about something, then I try to hold it in my head. Yes. And that fails.
Yeah.
and then I feel bad about it afterwards. I feel almost, I don't know, I get a little cranky with myself about it too. But I just feel like, well, I guess I can't keep all that in my head. And then I go back to, oh yeah, I need to go back to GTD or get it into things or what have you. But just get it out of my head.
And I'm not convinced that the stuff that stays in my head by itself is necessarily the best stuff that I need to be working on. I mean, if I don't write it down and then have another opportunity to make a choice later about where I want to set my intentions for the day, the week, the month, what have you, I think that it would just be almost random what I ended up doing.
Yes. Yeah, that's what it is. It's relieving this mental pressure, right? It's relieving this feeling of like, oh, all this stuff is in my head, and if I don't do something about it, the writing it down for me is the externalizing it. Makes me feel like, oh, I can look at all this now on a page, and now I can make an informed decision. I can weigh all these things against one another, seeing them kind of all laid out. I've worked at home, or I've worked remotely, I should say, for the past 7 years. So like, externalizing what I'm working on and why I'm working on that thing sort of became part of my process, because I had to communicate those things to my coworkers. So that helped me a lot. right? Because otherwise, I mean, I wasn't in the office with folks, so I had to communicate, what it is, and it usually was through text, because I work in tech companies, so people don't really do phone calls a whole lot, right? So it was usually like
Sure.
email and project management systems. So writing it down for me is like step one of the solution to everything of what's going to happen today.
Awesome.
So we have been talking about setting intentions for doing things this whole conversation. So Gina, I'm curious to know, what are your thoughts on setting intentions for how to be, not what to do?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up. You guys had that great episode about identity and being something versus doing something, and how that those two things relate. That was definitely one of the episodes I had to pause a couple of times. And it's funny. It's like the last 18 months or so of my life has been in crazy transition, upheaval. Had a child, moved across the country, closed around to funding for my company, launched a product, like a lot of stuff. And I was thinking about
oh, that's all?
That's all. That's all.
Just four things.
A lot
of
stuff. Yes. But I was thinking about, like, what did those, and these are all goals that I've had for, a long time, 10 years or more. And they all just sort of came together at the same time in the past 18 months. And there's two ways to have a goal, right? You can say, like, I want to be a parent, or I want to have a child, right? It's that sort of identity versus doing. And I do think that identity is linked to what you do. I mean, I do think that calling yourself a writer, if you write every day, is completely and utterly legitimate, regardless of whether you're writing in your journal or writing for a magazine. But when you aspire to be a certain way, or you intend to be a certain way, I still think that it is attached to doing. Like, if I aspire to be a calmer, more thoughtful person, then for me, and I'm not saying that this is true, but for me, that's attached to, like, what are the next steps for that? Or maybe that means that I try, quiet meditation more often. Maybe that means that I exercise more, to sort of burn off some of the stress, or whatever that means. It often is attached to kind of activity for me.
Now, be honest with us.
Okay.
When you decided to set the intention to be a parent, were there to-do items that went on your list?
There were. I mean, well, the first two item was have, like, extensive conversations with my partner.
That's a good one.
Extensive
Good first step.
conversations.
That could be a recurring to-do item.
That could have been a recurring to do. But you want to know the truth? Yes. During the whole time we were trying to get pregnant, my to-do list looked like, research sperm bank, like stop by fertility center, call doctor about, pick up drugs. Like, seriously, I mean, this is what getting pregnant means when you're doing IVF, which is what we did. I mean, it's a lot of, this sounds really cheesy, but during the Olympics right now, they're airing this commercial that shows the athlete kind of getting on the medal stand. And then they do this rewind thing. Have you seen this? Where it's like scenes from the athlete's life, like as a teenager in high school and, elementary school, and medals they got as a kid, like going all the way back to the time when they're a baby and they've just, gotten on skates for the first time, or just gotten on skis for the first time. And the tagline is something like, every big moment has, a million little moments behind it. And it's cheesy and it's a commercial, right? But it's totally true. Like, the night my daughter was born, I was like, oh my God, this has been 2 years of, like, medical, financial, emotional, and not to mention, like, decades of scientific achievement that, like, made this possible. And my to-do list totally had something to do with that. Also my wife. But yeah, I mean, it's all part of it.
Amazing.
Sorry if that was TMI, by the way. I've written about this. I've written about getting pregnant, so I feel like all the details are out there anyway. So I hope it's okay that I shared that.
No, this is we like going deep.
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
So I mean, you tell me. I've been talking a lot. Tell me a little bit about how you see intention. The two of you. I want to hear it from you two.
Well, we've grappled with this because part of what I what I struggle with is intention enough?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it's easy to say, oh, well, I intended for it to work out well. Well, it didn't. I didn't do what was necessary to make sure that it did. Or another way that this word is used a lot is, oh, but he has the best of intentions. It's like, oh, well, that's going to excuse the bad behavior on the surface of things because deep down in his heart, he's really a good guy. So I struggle with it, and I struggle with what differentiates intention from goal and the things that we've been talking about quite a bit. But I do know that without intention, that whatever outcome there is essentially random. So, for instance, when I do yoga regularly, and before the yoga class starts, the instructor will often say, set an intention for today's class, someone that needs some support right now or something that you are looking to achieve in your own life. And the practice of today will fuel that, essentially. And I often find that the physical challenges that may arise during that hour and a half are easy to overcome because I have the intention in the back of my mind of why I'm doing them. So it makes everything easier. And without the intention, it feels like it's just a physical thing that I'm doing. It's just exercise. And I can easily judge myself or give up or not push as hard. Or look at everybody else and see what they're doing, and I'm not doing it, and I just get stuck in the physical thing. Whereas when I have that intention set from the beginning of who I'm sending this up to, or even if it's just the intention of don't judge yourself during this class, then there's a purpose that underlies what I'm doing with my body.
That's so interesting. So do you think that by having that intention that you're actually helping that person or you're helping yourself?
I mean, both, I think. First of all, I'm definitely helping myself get through it. But I think that it's possible to send the energy out. I mean, for me, it's all interrelated. I believe that we're all connected. And I do feel strongly that when I have an intention or I've put myself in a mindset that's purposeful, that not only does it help me feel better, but I exude that, and then that reaches all of the people that are around me. And maybe I'm thinking about someone who's across the country, around the world, or not even living anymore. And so maybe it can't get to them directly, but I think in a way it still has an impact, even if I can't see it.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing about intention is that it's mostly just about getting your mind right. I mean, just because you intend to do something doesn't mean it's going to happen. Even if you try your best and do every single thing that you possibly can, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen. And that was one of the things that I really had to accept too. Is like, sure, I was saying earlier, you think, intention, this is going to happen for me. That's not always the case. And trying to become a parent was like part of that was accepting that it might not be in the cards for me for whatever reason. And that's it's tough to really commit to something and try your best when at the same time you have to understand that the things that happen in this world are pretty random, and you can try your best, but that doesn't mean that's actually gonna happen. But so it is mostly just getting your head right, getting your mind right, and having purpose behind your actions, but also being able to accept that you're gonna do your best, and then whatever happens.
Right, and it feels like with intention, that's really a state of being that you want to aspire to or get to. Right. And the actions are the things that help make that happen. And if they're lined up and everything goes in a certain way, then that can be extremely powerful. And if it doesn't happen, as you said, that's something that I know I would struggle with and have struggled with too, where there's an intention for a certain outcome, and then all these actions are lined up, I do everything, and it doesn't happen anyway.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of letting go of that attachment to what you expect to see, because it might not happen.
And what you think you can control, control, because you really can't control anything. I mean, I've had situations where I just knew that this thing in front of me was absolutely the right thing for me, and it was definitely going to happen without a doubt because I just felt it. And then it just didn't for whatever reason. And that can shake your sort of belief in, make you feel like, what's the point of trying for anything if this is all just sort of random and my gut feeling might not be right, or and sometimes it's just not knowing, like not having an intention, not having a goal, or not knowing where you want to go. That's almost scarier, or as scary.
That's way worse as far as I'm concerned.
Totally.
Oh my God, that gives me anxiety just thinking about it.
Just sort of being adrift and being like, I don't know what I'm trying for right now. Because to some degree, trying or striving is, I mean, that's sort of our default state. Like, that's our happiest state as humans, right?
We got to try.
Shooting for something, yeah.
Well, I think it's really important for us to restate, Gina, what you were just saying, which is that we can have the best of intentions, but ultimately we can't control our circumstances. We can't control the people around us. We can't control the natural order of things. So many things are conspiring often that are totally outside of our awareness, let alone our control. And sometimes we set these intentions and then things don't turn out the way that we wanted them to, and it can feel really disheartening. But what I try very hard and often fail at, but continue to try hard at remembering, is that I can't control anything outside of me, but what I can control is me.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I can still work on my mindset. I can still take care of my mental, emotional, and physical health. And if it doesn't, if I don't get the results out in the world that I'm looking for, well, so be it. But at the end, I'm still going to know that I did what I could for myself, that I planned to do well. I planned to do good for others. I intended to be great, rather than giving up or just saying, I'm going to take care of myself and screw everybody else. But really having a purpose and a meaning behind what we do.
Absolutely. What you were saying earlier about, when something goes terribly wrong and someone says, well, that wasn't my intention, or you had the best of intentions, like that is really frustrating when you're on the other side of it, right? But I try to remember those circumstances in which I didn't intend for something to go horribly wrong and it did, or I meant for something to go right and it didn't, and I didn't have control. I mean, sometimes I do think that people get a pass, or people give a pass for thoughtlessness. Like, I think there's a difference between thoughtlessness and, truly just things going the wrong way, intending for them to go one way and going the wrong way. And it's hard to tell what the situation is especially when you're sort of on the receiving end of a bad situation, that you feel like someone else could have, helped avoid or done better at.
Well, Gina, I would love to talk intention with you for the next 3 hours if I could, but unfortunately that's all the time we have for today.
This has been great, you guys. It was really so great to talk to both of you. I'm really so honored. I'm so happy that the show is back, and I can't listen to this episode because I can't stand to listen to myself. But I look forward to your future guests for sure.
Oh, Gina, thank you so much for taking the time to not only be a part of the show, but also listen and give us feedback. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Gina. We're such a fan of yours, so it's wonderful to have that mutual connection.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, that'll do it for this episode of Designing Yourself. Thank you once again to our very special guest, Gina Trapani, for joining us, and thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again soon.
Designing Yourself is hosted by Whitney Hess and Paul McAleer and is produced and edited by Whitney Hess and Paul McAleer. Our theme music is All Heroes by our Deacon Music Productions, with some rights reserved via Creative Commons. You can follow Whitney on Twitter at Whitney Hess, and you can follow Paul at Paul McAleer.
If you like what you heard on this episode, stop by our website at designingyourself.net. You can subscribe to the show via your favorite podcasting app or via iTunes. We'd love to hear your feedback. So if you have an idea for a topic, a guest, or just want to say hello, you can call our listener hotline. Just call 1-404-500-SELF. That's SELF. You can always reach us on Twitter at DesigningYou, and our super secret email address is designingyourself@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. We'll talk again soon.